Well, hello there and welcome to the bathroom of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Just Elfers for December 10th, the day of Inner Fervor. And here at the top of the page is a visual representation of the day of Inner Fervor. Will we have us an image of what could it be? Boom! It's a sunset rising up from the clouds. Maybe not a sunset, but a sun rising up out of the clouds. Now, is that an adequate representation of the day of Inner Fervor? I don't know. Who's to say? We might make some kind of connotation for as to why they chose that as we get on with the read. But that being said, it's not all too important. Not when it's December 10th and there's somebody's birthday to celebrate. No, sir, ma'am. And if that's the case, I just want to say happy birthday. That's what's important. Wishing you a happy birthday. Now, I realize this video might be coming to you late. Who's to say days, weeks, months, whatever the case may be. But if that is the case, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday. That's right. That's what's important around these here parts. Now, if you're just joining us randomly or here to celebrate the December 10th birthday, I just want to say hello, welcome, and hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that's live up to the namesake. That's right, rolling some dice. This is the DykASSt birthday broadcast, so we got to roll some dice. But I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. That's right. So I rolled a 6 and a 3 for a 9. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, the idea is just you getting out into the world and letting the universe, the powers that be, show you that they're with you on your path. See, too often we go through life kind of narrow of focus. You know what I mean? We got our singular aim. We're laser on our errands or our goals, whatever they be. So we got the blinders on. We may not see the things that are crossing our path. And it's been said, it's been told that everything that we put out in the world, our desires, our goals, well, the universe is set out to put those things in front of us, or at least the path to get there. But that being said, we got the blinders on, so sometimes we don't notice those things. Even more so, we might miss them. Yeah, but it's also said the universe will also put those things back in our path. But then again, we got to be able to notice them. So this is just kind of an exercise into doing that, if you like. But tapping in to that being our singular focus. That's right. And so what do we do to do that? Well, we need a little bit of a representational image, if you like. Something so that we can talk to the universe and say, hey, what do we need to identify these things? That's right. Some numbers. Now, you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you, but it is probably ideal you take your own pair of dice. Roll your numbers. You can also ascribe directional values to number sets as well as time limits with which to go in those directions. But once you have all that established, you pick out a place to start from, well, you head off. And let me tell you something, you got to stay eagle-eyed for just about everything out there. Soak things up like a sponge because you never know what else the universe might start throwing at you. It might be themes. It might be anomalies. It might just be your numbers. So let's say you get to the end of your first time limit there and direction by which to go by, and you still haven't seen anything. Well, you just stop, compose yourself, and let it all soak in. Let it all soak in. Maybe you start to see, I don't know, sunrises on things. Maybe the day takes on a theme. Maybe you see some kind of advertisement, some billboard, and it's the sun rising up. And there you go, and you look on a street sign, and there's a sticker of a sunrise or the sun coming up out of the clouds. Who's to say? Maybe you get a text message from somebody around that time, and they just happen to include that emoji. Who's to say? You just got to be eagle-eyed for those kinds of things happening. But that being said, maybe you don't see those kinds of things, but hey, maybe just a car pulls up and stops in a weird place. And you're like, what's going on? That's a weird place for that person to stop. But then you look at the finer details, right? You notice in the license plate, hey, maybe there's a 63 in there. Oh, hey, you know what? Interesting. That's one of your numbers. So you know what? Roll your dice. Find out how long to follow that car. That's right. Chase after it. Maybe you don't need to run it down, but just go in the direction that car is deciding to go. And maybe once you reach the end of that time limit, you stop, look around, and hey, what do you see? Maybe you're in front of a building with a, what's this? 36 in the address. And hey, maybe there's some kind of painting on the side of that building. What could it be? There you go. You know, maybe it's the sun rising up out of the clouds. Like I said, there you go. Some themes, some numbers. It's just crying out to you that this is a sign. So what do? You step into that building, and what do you find? Who's to say? Maybe it's a kind of a store you would have never stopped into. An old thrift shop person, maybe. I don't know. Could be. Maybe you're not the kind of person who stops into thrift shops. Well, you know what? Roll your dice so that maybe find out what aisle to go down. That's right. Oh, we got a 9. Go down aisle number 9. You're heading down that aisle, and what do you see? Hey, maybe it's an old friend that you haven't seen in years. And you know what? You wouldn't have been able to touch base with them if you hadn't had done this little practice here. And so maybe that's what was going on all along. The universe just finding a way for you to meet up with an old friend. And then you know what you do? You tell them what you're doing. And they say, what are you talking about? You've been rolling numbers and chasing cars and looking for sunrises. And you know what? Maybe they're just apt to join you. And then they make the manifestation that much stronger, the day that much more interesting. In any event, I think you get the idea. So get out there, see, taste, touch, feel, maybe even smell just a little bit of the magic. And if you do, you'll see why I suggested as much. And at the very least, get some of your steps in. That's right, a little exercise for some exercise. That's right. So let's dive into it, shall we? I think you get the idea. Your month is December, your day is the 10th, and your sign is 17 to 19 degrees Sagittarius of the Sagittarius II period specifically, the last day of it, if I'm not mistaken. And your quality and element is mutable fire. All right, December 10th, the day of Inner Fervor. Those born on December 10 tend to internalize their feelings and proceed through life modestly, convinced of their worth. And if they draw attention to themselves, it is most likely to strengthen their message or further their cause. Conceit, pride, arrogance, and egotism at times seem unknown to these individuals, whose greatest desire is to serve others. Rarely, however, do others understand the depth of December 10 emotions, which are an extreme private affair and not easily shared. Indeed, the most singular gift those born on this day can give is to reveal themselves, as this act indicates great trust. Belief is an important theme in the lives of December 10 people. Devotional types, they pray at the altar of character, wisdom, morality, and revere only the finest characteristics of human nature. Very often, however, they reserve their greatest interest for non-human subjects because they instinctively recognize that flesh and blood beings rarely live up to the highest ideals. Nature in particular holds a fascination for December 10 people, whether it be animals, plant life, or untouched natural settings. Philosophically deep, those born on this day spend far more time than most pondering questions of existence. They may put their faith in God, nature, the universe, scientific laws, or in a moving spirit behind all things. But they generally put their faith somewhere. And indeed, such things are not mutually exclusive for them. December 10 people often give an impression of otherworldliness, and they do seem to dwell on a plane far removed from the pettiness and suffering of everyday life. And for this reason, it may be difficult not only for them to take their place in the world of society, but also to find a mate with whom they can share their ambient idealism. And if they do find such a person, that person may serve as their bulwark, protector, and supporter. And it is most often fortunate for all concerned when December 10 people assume positions of leadership, as they make both sympathetic and understanding bosses who not only maintain good relations with their coworkers, but also have a knack for staying above the fray and avoiding no-win contests. And those born on this day often make nurturing, interesting parents as well, or interested parents rather, as long as their mate will take an active role in sharing the responsibilities of parenthood. Sadly, it is rare that their sensitive nature can stomach what is required of them to latch on to power. And admittedly, December 10 people may not handle stress well, and therefore high power roles should only be taken on if they can handle with equanimity and can ultimately provide them with the kind of comfortable living situation and privacy they require. Well, all right. How about that for a somewhat ratherly narrow-focused birthday? But I would say it had a lot of interesting, valuable aspects to examine. That being said, let's move on to a little bit of a commentary I like to provide between each part of the reading. So let's get in on the breakdown here and see what I had to say. December 10th, the day of Inner Fervor. All right, you're one who tends to internalize their feelings modestly, convinced of your worth. And the reading claims your greatest desire may be to serve others. And drawing attention to yourself only as a means to further your cause. That said, rarely do others understand the emotions of those born on this day, which can probably be said equally for this absence of conceit that they mentioned. Also of pride, arrogance, and ego in your personality. It just doesn't work for you, which is interesting. At least if it's accurate, who's to say? To which, if true, I could see some people assuming it to be some kind of artifice, maybe, or perhaps misinterpreting as much as some kind of intrinsic weakness. That's right. They might see you as some kind of meek person, someone who can't rise to the occasion. So I think this is pretty interesting, because it just seems so foreign or alien in a lot of regards, I would imagine. In which case, it's probably a strength, however, because many people aren't able to attain that, let alone wrap their head around such an understanding. So yeah, don't let it's kind of like seeing the forest for the trees there, or judging a book by its cover. They can't understand the contents of as much, because, like I said, we're just not used to running into folks who seem to not have any of those things in themselves. But the reading furthers that you may be devotional towards character, wisdom, and morality to the extent that you seemingly disavow yourself of regard for others, which is it's a complete contrast to what they mentioned, that you are in service to others. So that's a little bit interesting. Maybe a little bit of a conflict there, who's to say? But probably because such ideals are so seemingly or sorely lacking in folks on the surface. That's another interesting idea, which I could also see as possibly seeming like a kind of superior attitude from you there. At least that's how people might interpret it. You're kind of turned off by society in general because you can't really identify with it, right? So they might see you as superior when all told, again, it's a book by its cover kind of thing. That's not it at all. They just got to crack open that cover and figure out the contents to see that you don't seem to match up with it. Who's to say? I don't know, even if it applies, that is, right? But the reading goes on to relate such aspects of your personality may make it hard for you to also find someone with whom to share not just your life, but those same said views. But if you did, all right, those very same people may make or take an instrumental role in your life, to the extent they might just be your rock or your bulwark, if you like. Or, in my opinion, not necessarily someone you depend on for survival, but who serves as a kind of conduit for you to better connect your particular station with the other ones in this life. The other folks, they can help, they can help translate for you, if you like, right? At least with others. What else do I have to say here? And then interestingly, this is something I didn't expect. The reading drills down on your ability to assume positions of leadership. It just seems so out of left field to have this thrown in. And I didn't see it coming up. But considering your purported ideals, it makes me almost envious for not having had a boss with such an approach. But by and large, this is a rather well-rounded birthday reading, despite it being so narrowly focused on just one aspect, and then they were just kind of blowing it up to show off how it related to a bunch of other different aspects of your life, which therein made it well-rounded. And they also drilled down on family and how you relate and show a nurturing nature and such. But generally, they kind of don't just focus in on one thing and expand from there. It's kind of the other way around. So, but that being said, I think I know why they did that. So let's dive into why that reason is as we transition on into your numbers and your planets. That's right. Those born on the 10th of the month are ruled by the number 1, as 1 plus 0, that equals 1, and by the sun. Those ruled by the number 1 generally like to be first in what they do, which is the case for December 10 people. And it may mean putting their private needs foremost. And the sun tends to grant the qualities of a warm and well-developed ego with a distinctly human, positive orientation to life. And it's here underlined by the idealism and optimism of Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius. And those ruled by the number 1 have a sharply defined view on most subjects. And indeed, December 10 can be extremely stubborn in this regard. High ambition is a trait of those ruled by the number 1, but in the case of December 10 people, their goals are usually both personal and universal rather than worldly. Very interesting. See, even this numbers and planets thing, it seems like a complete conflict with what was shown off in the breakdown. The well-developed ego, it said you didn't necessarily have those kinds of things. But you know what? That might just be an earmark of a well-developed ego. Who's to say? Again, it was more that book by its cover kind of thing. You don't understand the contents of the subject matter until you crack that cover. It was almost as if there was nothing on your cover to get a good reading or a good judgment from. I don't know who's to say, but this did seem to be kind of in conflict in a sort of way. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's dive in with what I wrote in the book here. So we got to turn to the right part of the page, right? The number 1 in the sun for a well-developed ego, which it must be if it seems unknown to you at times based on the breakdown. Also a distinctly human, idealistic, in a good way, positive orientation to life. The likes of which, interestingly, the reading claims you can be stubborn about, which makes sense now that it's mentioned. But that's not necessarily the first word that comes to mind, so that's interesting there. But I don't think I picked up on here with regard to such things having a positive bent either. So it's just this is such an interesting day here, because a lot of the things that one might assume a negative aspect to, for you, it's more of a positive way of relation there. And sun-ruled days usually have a hyper-focus on one element and describe how it affects the rest of your life. Like I said previously, I'm getting ahead of myself, getting a little excited here. I don't know why. So, despite it making absolute sense, that said, it's interesting to see how Jupiter's expansive optimism coupled with the sun is realized, as I don't think I would have come even close to this had I been the one responsible for trying to relate the kind of personality that comes from having a Sun-Jupiter rulership. The Sun and Jupiter are somewhat similar in that they both kind of rise to the top to be first in the class or whatever, and they also help embolden the other characteristics of the other primary planet rulership. So it's like you've got one that does that for the other, but the other one does the same thing. What kind of results are you going to get out of that? So it's kind of interesting to see what they landed on here. Now, that being said, like I said, your day was very hyper-focused on like one narrowly expanded upon idea. And I don't tend to recognize it until we get to the number. And you know what? Today is totally a sun rulership kind of day. But they're always so different in what kind of trait they decide to drill down on, and how it expands out into everything else. So these are always surprising me, and so that's kind of why I was excited about this one here. It's like, oh, so that's how it's realized. Interesting. Again, assuming it applies. But in any event, that's been your numbers and your planets. The number 1 in the sun with the Jupiter co-rulership from Sagittarius. So let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, but hey, it's here in the book. We don't have to take it home with us, start dealing out the cards to, inspire every whim and flight of fancy. We just leave it here in the book if we find it something that's blasphemous, right? So let's get into it regardless. The 10th card of the major arcana is the Wheel of Fortune, which signifies both positive and negative reversals of fortune, and suggests that there is nothing permanent accept change. And those ruled by the number 1 and 10 focus on seizing opportunities. And indeed, acting at just the right moment is the key to their success. Again, the Wheel of Fortune teaches that no success in life is permanent, nor any failure. All right, glass half empty and half full there. So what I have to say here about your tarot. The Wheel of Fortune, all right, which is a once-a-month card. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know that I necessarily see this as a particularly apt card for you. But perhaps I'm just being myopic, right? Not seeing the forest for the trees there, or the trees for the forest there, for short-sighted folks, which is what myopia is, right? It does seem to there does seem change may be particularly difficult for you if you have to shift your trademark individual reality to that outside world dynamic that in a lot of cases it seems you might even be opposed to in certain regards. So in that particular understanding of this, I could see how it's apt, right? The Wheel of Fortune teaches that no success in life is permanent. No, not that part. Nothing is permanent except change. That's right. So you're always going to have to deal with some kind of change. And you seem to be at a stark juxtaposition with it. There's a little bit of a conflict there. That being said, I could see how it might apply in that regard. And I'm pretty sure I lost my place here. See if I can pick it up. It does seem change may be particularly difficult for you to handle if you have to shift your trademark individual reality to that, the outside world, all right? Which probably extends soup to nuts, all right? To say from the outside world's ideas all the way down to physical situations. But the seizing opportunities aspect, I didn't really identify that aspect because they didn't really necessarily drill down on any of that in the breakdown. So I don't really know where to, what do you call it, append that to it or take that from it. But here's the thing. It just has to speak to you. I'm not the one that has to understand it. You can take this on your own life and say, oh, that works, or no, it's not apt at all. Who's to say? I kind of tend to mystify. I got to figure everything out. It's not for me. It's for you. It's your birthday. So if it speaks to you, then it's an apt card, right? But that also being said, sometimes these just don't line up. The book didn't really elaborate on it, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they say this card serves as something that this person should strive to emulate just because of certain characteristics. But again, they didn't elaborate on that here. But that being said, even just the message that the Wheel of Fortune card teaches, the no success in life is permanent nor any failure, hey, it's just good advice in general. So that's at least something we can take from it, regardless of if it applies to our lives, right? That being said, that's the tarot. That's what I had to say. Maybe a little disjointed, and I reread something a couple times there, but hey, that's how it happens. That's how it goes with the one shot, one takes. So let's move on. Try to pick the energy back up with your health. All right. December 10 people must be careful not to bury themselves emotionally. They should always keep avenues open to the outside social world. If they become too withdrawn, they may suffer emotional difficulties, which become increasingly harder to discuss or share with anyone. Having a small circle of friends and, if possible, an understanding mate helps enormously. On the other hand, those born on this day should not become too dependent on any one person, no matter how trustworthy or helpful. December 10 people have a great need to give, and all nurturing activities such as cooking, raising children, or making a comfortable home seem to keep them in good health. Sharing food particularly, and developing a healthy diet built around fresh foods and tasty recipes is important for their positive orientation toward life. Only mild exercise is recommended, such as walking in the open air or gardening. Finding a means to enjoy country life is particularly recommended. All right, what I have to say about your health here. All right, don't bury yourself emotionally, okay? Be open to the outside world, okay? At least to us heathens, perhaps, if that's what they're going for here, if you like. All right, but don't suffer emotional difficulties that might just compound their effects, okay? You suffer those emotions, The emotions might come back even stronger if it didn't make sense. And then they say, don't depend on just one person. Expand that out a little bit more, okay? And they say it's smart suggestion too, because you're getting to expand your horizons also. See what else maybe you don't know that somebody else might be able to elaborate on. You never know. Folks can surprise us sometimes. Somebody always has something to teach us, even if it's what not to do. That's right. And maybe you already knew. Maybe they're just ensconcing that fact. Physical, what did they say? I'm getting ahead of myself again. Mild exercise and a healthy diet of fresh foods and country living is recommended for your physical as well as psychological welfare. Which a rather sparse mention about that. But that's how it goes sometimes. They bring up the emotional aspects or the disconnect from society and how that affects us. Hey, there's some components in there that we should be mindful of sometimes. And what's interesting, they don't often bring up the psychological or the emotional. A lot of times they just drill down on the healthy diet and or one that's specific for you that's healthy, and as well as the kind of exercise you might need based on, as far as I can tell, the planet co-rulerships. To say if you were a Mars day and you got all that aggression and anger, you need to get a physical, vigorous exercise regimen to help you expound all those, or excise all those negative energies, right? And here for you, mild exercise. That's right. But a lot of times the diet and the exercise get traded off for the psychological component, at least in the most recent periods, all the way back to Scorpio, say. A lot of the times the psychological was never mentioned. And I only bring that up to say, maybe take note. Because if they're bringing it up, there's probably some component in there baked into the thing. At least from a zodiac positional type thing. It might not apply to you, who's to say. But in any event, that's been your health. So let's move on to some advice. All right. Resist your tendency to withdraw from the world. All right. Maintain a bond with others. Believe in people as well as in God or nature. And don't be afraid of rejection. All right. Fight to be heard if necessary. All right. Pretty interesting advice there. Really valuable. And although we've heard all of it before, haven't we? To some extent. And even let me dive into what I had to say. I had to write it in the book itself because I ran out of space on the page. Resist your tendency to withdraw. All right. You're probably going to do it if what was written in the book at all holds true. But get out of your comfort zone on occasion, okay? Test those limits. Expand your horizons. Jupiter is the expansive planet, which is said to impart expansiveness of mind and philosophy, etc. Lean into that, all right? It's part of your Jupiter rulership. It's got your back, I would say. It says maintain bonds with others. Same argument, I would say, all right? We already talked about it. Expand your horizons, see what other people have to teach you, even if it's what not to do. And other people just add things to our lives too, and they can surprise us. People are a part of nature also. That's right. They said you're really fixated with nature, or you get a lot from it, nurturing aspects, or you see it as a god. Hey, they're part of nature too. And you're a person. Don't forget that. Even though you might not feel like you've got any connection. I was born the wrong entity, maybe. Who's to say? But that's not the case. That's not what lot you drew. So you got to deal with it. Don't be afraid of rejection. Not quite sure where this part came up, but you might feel like a reject, like you're not part of society. Maybe that's where it came from. But again, that's also a part of life. All right. It helps us improve. It also builds up our character and our wherewithal to withstand future rejections. That's right. They're going to come in one form or another. Even if it's just the kind of day you didn't want to see coming. You had an excursion planned for tomorrow. A nice day out in nature. What's this? Boom, you hit with thunder showers. The sun wasn't able to crack through those clouds. That's a kind of rejection, no? That's right. They come up, don't they? Fight to be heard is the last piece they wrote here. Don't just let things go, perhaps, all right? Your voice is valid, too, okay? Fight to be heard. You're also a person. You also have value, so let it be heard. All right, that's your advice. Let's take the energy down just a hair and get into your meditation. That's right, your meditation here. This one's maybe the most simple one we've come across yet. See God in everything. Oh, all right. I like this one for you on a variety of levels. See God in everything. All right. That being said, I'm not going to break it down for you. That's right. This is your meditation, your birthday. It wouldn't have much value if I threw my spin on it for you. It wouldn't be a meditation if I was the one meditating on it for you. That's right. So see God in everything. All right. That's been your meditation. So let's move on to your strengths and weaknesses. All right. Let's see where you've got the strengths and the weaknesses. I don't have a good way of relating the beginning of that one or segueing into it. So let's just get on with it, shall we? Your strengths. You're inwardly calm. That's a new one. Appreciative. I think that one is too. And you're spiritual. All right. And I liked your kind of spiritual too, one with nature. That's a good one there. Coming from a pantheist, I can understand that. All right. Then your weaknesses, though. Oh, we got to get into the weaknesses. We got to turn the objective mirror around to the side of the mirror that blows up your face there. Shows off all the pock marks and the things that you're kind of superficially aware of all the time. That's right. At least around other people when you go out, maybe. Your weaknesses, only two here. You're inscrutable and you're reclusive. Oh, I have to look up your inscrutable because I'm not exactly sure what it means, so I have an idea. Hey, here's what I like to say a lot of times. Don't put too much stock in your weaknesses, all right? Sometimes our weaknesses can become strengths, depending upon the situation. You're reclusive, well, you know what? If anarchy were to break out in town, that's not such a bad thing now, is it? All right? You're in your little hovel, and none of that's affecting you, all right? That being, I mean, that's an interesting case, but probably not applicable. But, you know, that's kind of the example I'm giving you here. But also, who's to say if those weaknesses are really bothering you, I often argue your strengths can help you combat them or at least suppress them a little bit. You're inwardly calm. That's huge. How many people are calm, right? Especially with the emotions there. Not many. So you can get over those things. Although, who's to say what inscrutable means? Because I'm not sure. I'll leave it in the description. But you're also appreciative and you're spiritual. You know what? Optimism, that. Having that straightforward, good approach, things are going to be all right. I'm going to overcome them. I appreciate what I have. With gratitude, I hear gratitude gets people over mountains. That's right. So use those strengths to combat those weaknesses, if and they need combated. That's right. That being said, those are your strengths and weaknesses haven't been related. Let's move on to those born on this day. When we get into those born on this day, something I like to segue and examine is not just who shares your company, but what's important to us? What are our passions? Let's figure them out. Because too often in life, I get out and meet folks, ask them what they do, and if they like it, and they don't. And I think it's just because they haven't figured out their passions. And you can't blame a lot of people because it takes time and it takes effort to put into figuring that out a lot of times. But I think it's a worthy, thing to go after, because it helps us find something fulfilling to do with our life, and it gets us out of bed happy to do what we want to do in the morning, eager to get on with the day. And so I think it's a perfect opportunity not only to see who shares your company, but what they did to get in the book, and maybe it can help us drum up some inspiration, fuel our fires, if you like, to figure those things out, assuming we haven't already. But hey, maybe if you have your passions figured out and you don't know how to make them work financially for you, hey, maybe me putting the bug in your ear about all this is going to help you get back on the horse and put the time and the energy into figuring that out. So let's dive into it, see what we can see, maybe take some inspiration. All right, we start off strong with the person I've had in mind the whole time reading this because her picture's plastered real big on the page there. Emily Dickinson. All right, 19th century poet, recluse, and over 1,000 poems anonymously published, but a few. We have Oliver Messiaen, a French 20th century composer as well as an organist. Ada Byron, Lord Byron's daughter, Countess of Lovelace, it says, mathematically and scientifically gifted. Mechanical calculator, co-inventor. We have William Lloyd Garrison, an abolitionist, reformer, journalist, and a lecturer. César Franck, Belgian-French romantic organist and a composer. Oh, there's the second one today there. Morton Gould, composer, ASCAP president. Mahara G, an Indian spiritual teacher. Dorothy Lamour, film actress, or Lamar perhaps. Chet Huntley, a TV journalist of Huntley and Brinkley. We also have Ludwig Klogs, Klages, however that might be pronounced, a German philosopher and a graphologist, and a character student. We also have Ray Nance, the jazz trumpeter, cornetist, violinist, singer, and a dancer. Cool, quite the Renaissance man in that respect. Don Sebesky, a jazz composer, arranger, and trombonist. A lot of musicians today. Maybe that's part of your passion. Susan Day, a TV actress. Michael Snow, Canadian experimental filmmaker of wavelength, and also a painter, sculptor, and a musician. We also have Clayton Uetter, Yuetter. I think I might be pronouncing that right. Uetter. U.S. Trade Representative, it says. We also have Doris Cross, a contemporary painter and construction maker, as well as a lithographer. Dennis Morgan, a TV film actor. Thomas Holcroft, British 18th century playwright and translator. Sir William Fenwick Williams, British 19th century heroic general. And we finish off here with Edith Randall, an astrologer. Now I think I recognized one of those names, Emily Dickinson. Hey, it happens sometimes, so you know what? Not only are you probably in good company, you can probably take so much from these other folks, but it might not take much for you to stand out. Though I'd say, based on the breakdown, that's probably not altogether all too important to you. Some of these folks probably didn't even want to get put in the book, quite honestly. Isn't that right? In any event, that's been those born on this day. If anything, hopefully I could help you get inspired to get after your passions if you don't already have them figured out. Because you know what? Based on everything we went over today, you probably knew years ago. That's right. You might not even have the internet because you're so involved in your particular passions. That's right. You don't need to hear about your birthday. I don't know. I'm assuming. Some of this might not apply. And you might be a leadership boss kind of person that I didn't even assume that would get brought up in the book. So you might be coming in out of left field with a lot of this. Any event, like I said, defy the expectations. I love that when that happens because we have to be put in our place, right? And maybe you don't know about that, but I do. So any event, that's been those born on this day, which essentially rounds out your birthday read, except to say your season is fall, your sign is Sagittarius, of the Sagittarius II period specifically, and your quality and elements is mutable fire. And this has been December 10th, the day of Inner Fervor, from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers. If you found this interesting, hey, let me tell you something. This book makes a great coffee table book. If you decide not to be reclusive and expand your horizons, maybe invite some folks over for tea and whatever, experience your company. Hey, you know what? Break this thing out. It's going to get the conversation started, for better or for worse. But you're an optimist. I'm sure you can handle even the worst, right? Help bring those people back in for a win-win situation that you as a leader has said are able to, bring about. There you go. I can't think of what I would say. In any event, there's an affiliate link for that down in the description if you're interested. Save the hassle of having to type it in a browser, and you support the channel in the bargain too, which I appreciate. That being said, and that's not what's altogether all too important here. Like I said at the top, what is important, wishing you a happy birthday. So happy birthday, okay? If anything else I can bring up, it's that. And also, figuring out your passions, that's an important one too. And let's not forget your daily numbers. That's right. You getting out into nature, into this world, and letting the universe show you, or nature, your God show you, that it's with you on your path. But like I said, you probably knew all that already anyhow. Am I right? Any event, like I said, if you get out there and taste, touch, feel, smell, or even see or hear any of that magic, you understand why I brought it up in the first place. And you know what? I didn't really make any connotations for the sunrise throughout the reading, except to say, you know what? It just seems to speak to the day by and large. I can't put my finger on as to why, and a lot of times those things don't necessarily line up, but I think it was a great representational image, right? Coming up out of the clouds, that's right, to show off all the brilliant, luminous light there. Then once again, happy birthday, and take care of yourself.